Welcome to our Saturday Simulcast Christmas Eve version. And I'm joined by Tom Dienhart and Brian Neubert. I want to thank our sponsor, the Union Club Hotel and the 811 Restaurant. We appreciate them, and I know they're doing some Christmas business. Got some family members that are staying there over this weekend, and want to also wish everybody down the line happy holidays, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year. We will have a show next week leading into the New Year after Purdue's bowl game, probably leading the day after, since the Boilermakers play on Thursday afternoon when they take on Tennessee. All right, one of the things we're going to hit on today is kind of our stories of the year and what we thought. Kind of a rank. We'll go 3, 2, 1 in terms of our top three, and maybe also list our honorable mentions after that. And Dienhart is before Neubert, so I'm going to start with Tom on your lucky day. If you were going to pick your third most relevant story in Purdue sports this year, what would that be?
Third most relevant. I guess I would go. I'd go volleyball. Highest final ranking ever, right? Number 6 in the country. Elite 8 appearance as well. Dave Shondell has done a tremendous job reestablishing what Carol Dewey had really got going way back in the 80s and made Purdue a national power, and continues to knock at the door of the Final Four, playing in the toughest conference in America. So, again, Shondell, Purdue number 6 in the country, Elite 8. Just a big story, big doings for that program this fall.
Yeah, I would agree as Al's being second in line here. The thing I think too is that part of it kind of ties into the whole fans returning to games too. I mean, they sold out just about every game, and we even see it on our site. Just the interest on our message boards, people following, and they're a winner. And they obviously got their highest ranking ever. Also, I believe they got as high as number 3 this year, and beat Wisconsin, who won the national championship, beat them twice. So, you keep thinking, and Dave would be the first to say, boy, I'd like to get over the hump and get to the Final Four. Pitt eked them out in a 3-1 match, but that has been a program that has been consistent. And though he's going to lose a lot of players, and not that we don't cover volleyball very closely, certainly, but you do know that they have a lot of kids that came back from COVID and played well for them. He'll have to do a little bit of reloading next year, but Dave Shondell's team in the gauntlet that is the Big Ten is certainly it would be in my top 3, and I would rank that third. And it's funny, it's kind of like every year for him. It was his 4th Elite 8 appearance, I should say, and he's been a fixture in the Sweet 16. Brian, what say you?
I don't think I understand the rules here, so I'm going third. But is this my third story in descending order, or is this my first story now that you two
different? Pick something different, Brian.
I've already gone.
No, it's your third. Confused. It's your third. Yeah, this is not your top story, not your second biggest story, your third biggest story. And yet, N is in Neubert, so you got to go last, but you get to go first.
What if you guys took it already?
Well, that's okay. You
play along.
Or do you have something else there?
All right, I'm just going to say, football gets back headed in the right direction. And I mean, I don't just mean on the field. I mean, Purdue gets Brady Allen and Joe Strickland in this recruiting class, signs a pretty solid recruiting class. Half of Indiana's team from Indianapolis seems to be wanting to transfer to Purdue all of a sudden. I think that, you're sitting here about to have some NFL success with George Karlaftis and David Bell, putting Purdue back in the forefront here. You just won 8 games. You got a couple more of those signature moments with some of the games you won over Iowa and Michigan State. And I think this season was almost like the last 2 seasons that never happened. This was what you wanted to see happen in 2019 after year 2 of Jeff Brom, before the 2-year downturn, the first of which, obviously, there was a lot of injuries. The second of which, obviously, was played during a pandemic. So I think that there were a lot of circumstances at play here, but I think that's probably my biggest story, or my third biggest story, I guess, was that football sort of caught back up to its trajectory. beyond what happened on the field. I think, Purdue's back on stable ground here. And I think the fact they got Aiden O'Connell back next season, I think gives them an opportunity to pick right back up next season where they left off this season. So I think Purdue's in a pretty good spot here, and that's pretty significant, obviously.
All right, now we get to rotate back to you, Brian. What if that's your third? What's your second?
What?
Rotate back.
In reverse order.
This is reverse draft order here. Well, I'm making you guys work today. This is
no,
tough.
You're making me think, and I don't think so good.
We don't want to think on Christmas Eve. I'm with you on that.
All right. Well, look, I just went with a known commodity, so I'm all out of order now. But one of my three would be, obviously, you guys already use volleyball, so I will just go with the women's basketball coaching transition. Had I done this right, I think that would have been my third.
Yeah, that's all right.
Story out of three. But I think I have to use it second now because I'm out of material. I think that obviously that's a program where Purdue's used to having a winner. It has not had a winner in a period of time longer than that program anticipates or is generally accustomed to. I think that all signs right away are that Katie Geralds has a big job on her hands, but also has done pretty well here these first couple of months. From everything I can tell. I don't think Sharon Versup left things in a great place. Obviously, all due respect to a coach who was at Purdue for a long time, did some very positive things, but I think that had run its course some time ago. Yeah. And I understand the financial considerations of making coaching changes and all of that, but I think this was a couple years overdue. And I think that obviously Katie Geralds, as I said before, is one of the, I don't know, is it favorite daughters in women's basketball? One of the favorite daughters of Purdue women's basketball, puts a very positive, charismatic face on the program, and seems wired to bring a certain energy to a program that desperately needs personality, desperately needs energy. And I think that's obviously one of the biggest stories of the year. Again, this has long been one of Purdue's gold standard programs. It has not been for the last, I don't know how many years now, 5-6 years, whatever it's been, maybe even longer than that. It needs, I don't want to say it needs to get back there because I think, women's basketball is a bit of a different animal from a revenue generation perspective than football and men's basketball. But from a school pride perspective, from a tradition perspective, Purdue needs to get back to a place where they're, well respected in women's basketball, if not, a true winner.
Yeah, I think that's and that would have been certainly my top five. And I think with the energy she's brought together and the fact that Purdue was able to win at Florida State, beat Georgia Tech also already is already pretty surprising. I was really expecting, and we may have by the end of the day, it's a very similar year to what Matt Painter had in his first year when he won 9 games. And whether Purdue will get to 500 would be an amazing story, at least according to Tim Newton, who's the voice of Purdue women's basketball. He really felt like if they could get to 500, that would be extremely impressive.
But the thing with Painter's first season was they only won 9 games. But I don't know anybody who walked away from that season and didn't see positive. Didn't see a team that played its hindquarters off.
Oh, absolutely.
And I think everybody who watched that team play that season knew that was going to be a well-coached, well-prepared, effort-driven team that was headed in the right direction. I think the women's basketball program already, and I understand reality might set in when Big Ten play does or whatever. I don't know the Big Ten well enough, obviously, but I think they've done enough positive things here already, both on the floor and on the recruiting trail, where things seem pretty positive. And what Purdue needed more than anything, first and foremost, was something positive to happen. And it seems like it has.
Yeah, I think that's where the similarities lie because, the Painter's first year, obviously Carl Landry and David Teague did not play. But the effort level set the foundation for the entire program. I mean, there's no question. And obviously also the signing of Rob Hummel and Juwan Johnson, Etwan Moore, and Scott Martin in that first year was critical too. And my second one was kind of an overriding view of looking at men's basketball making it to number one, and that's a story in itself. It only lasted a week, but it was to me kind of an achievement that as Matt Painter talked about many times, or has talked about when it went on. It was great for the fans, great for the players. And really good for the program, and yet, yes, a last second shot and loss at Rutgers wiped Purdue from that perch. They have the chance to get back there certainly throughout the course of the year, but it just gave a validation, I think, to the program that we all thought that they were certainly in that milieu, and they finally got to number one. That hype for that I thought was a great story, and maybe a tie into that is just that November start with winning against North Carolina and Villanova, and all the excitement that was in Mackey Arena when Purdue played Florida State and Iowa. I don't think I've ever seen Mackey Arena any louder at the start of a game than that Iowa game. I thought Purdue was nervous. Obviously, the Boilermakers had to get stretched to win that game and get that number one ranking. But that story to me was a extremely important one for 2021. Tom Dienhart, you get two now, so be ready. You get your second and your first. So go ahead.
Brian got me thinking of Nate Manoy and Corey Spates and Chris Lutz.
Chris Lutz, that's right.
I had to cover that. I had to cover that mess.
To go. I'll do something different. Fans are back.
Yeah.
Fans are back. Well, we had many conversations almost beginning 2 years ago, right? In March of 2020, April of 2020. There's a lot of unknowns for a lot of people, us included. Not that we're the most important people in the world or what we do is that important, but, again, without fans, that obviously hit a lot of these schools, hit every school in the pocketbook. And again, the return of fans was big. We've seen it in football. I know we're having issues going on now with COVID and the spike, but again, just the return of fans. And I tell you, Brian covered all the basketball, and I was in the press box with Alan for football, and I never missed fans more than I realized sitting through those games in 2020. Just the lack of atmosphere and what the energy they all bring. We know that, but to really see it without fans and just the moribund atmosphere, the lack of pizzazz, of excitement, boy, I really missed it. And to have those people back, to have a sense of normalcy again, I think was a huge story in 2021.
All right, you're going to.
Oh, and again, for me,
anything else?
Football, Brian or Alan, you guys talked a little bit about football. Brian talked a little bit about football. I don't think he mentioned, I think for me, obviously getting 8 wins, first time since 2006. The big wins, the win over the top 5 wins, the win at Iowa, the win at home against Michigan State. I mean, those resonated nationally, guys. And Brian talked about the return of prominence to a degree of this program on many different levels. And they became a national story, particularly after that Iowa win. They won some National Team of the Week awards, and that was huge. And again, that was, it goes without saying that the program needed that boost of energy, that bolt of notoriety. And it looks like things are back on track, as Brian talked about football wise. So again, those 2 big wins for football in particular, I think were some of the biggest things that happened this last calendar year for Purdue sports.
Yeah, I think that's, I agree. And in another platform, at least I would have picked number one, that pick, but I'll move it around a little bit and tie in just the uptick in Purdue sports and the fact that, am I taking yours now, Brian? But
I have no idea.
I think so. You'll have at least a minute to figure something out here. But no, I think the fact that volleyball, soccer, some individual champions at a high level, what Purdue did in the Olympics, also just an uptick in really positive feeling about Purdue sports. More people saying, boy, I've never seen Purdue sports at a higher level. Obviously, with men's basketball being ranked number one and football doing something it hadn't done since 1960, and that's, of course, winning against two top 5 teams in the same year. And I would agree with Tom, just the fact the fans were back more than I expected, more than I ever would have expected. The fact that Purdue sold out games against Wisconsin, sold out the bucket game, or at least reached attendance level, it was very, very impressive, especially when you figure Indiana wasn't much of a factor in terms of fans, and the Hoosiers had such a difficult year this year. So, that I think is an overriding storyline, just the resurgence or the level that Purdue sports teams did, but it really was capped off by football winning the games it won, becoming, as Brian's written about several times and Tom has as well, about being relevant nationally. That I think is hard to put to and stabilizing. And we didn't know that was going to be the case heading into 2021, but it looks like Jeff Brom and company have got this program back to where they wanted, as Brian mentioned earlier. And that I think is hard to minimize as you look back at 2021 and what's gone on. Obviously, in the last week, if Purdue could beat Tennessee and get to that 9th win, that would also be a major storyline, just put an additional feather in the Boilermakers cap. So, all right, Brian, take us home. So what do you got for your last one?
I want to amplify something Tom said, and you also repeated that it is really nice having fans back. As much as I became accustomed to the no lines for the men's room at halftime of basketball games, and as much as I thought I wasn't going to want, crowded concourses again, college basketball just wasn't right without fans there. They are obviously the heartbeat of the game. They are the heartbeat of Mackey Arena, and it is so much more alive when they are there, obviously. So I just wanted to amplify that. That was a really big deal. The same thing can be said for football. I thought football had a great environment this season. But I guess the other story that none of us have mentioned in the list of 9 stories we've now covered over the 3 of us, 3 times 3 equals 9, is the fact that, college sports came out of all this tumult from COVID and right into an entirely new world here. And I think, between transfer reform, between name, image, likeness, all of this stuff, college sports has changed fundamentally. It's been, the proverbial sea change in college sports, and everybody involved has had to kind of acclimate to that in a very short period of time, because you just woke up one morning and it was all there. I think everybody knew it was coming. But I think that with the transfer stuff, I don't know if, coaches and whatnot really believed it was going to happen until, the presidents and whoever else screwed the pooch and actually did it. Whereas the name, image, likeness thing, was always eventually going to happen. Yeah. But it took state governments, to do the NCAA's job for them by forcing that to happen. And it just all kind of happened. And everybody's still kind of figuring everything out as they go. The NCAA is going to have to get its arms around the name, image, likeness thing to make sure it doesn't become everybody's worst nightmare, the worst case scenario that everybody assumed it would be when it first happened. And then the transfer thing, I think over time, the players are going to kind of settle down a little bit and probably be a little bit less likely to move. And I think the coaches are going to get in a little bit of a comfort zone here over time. But I think also this is just the game now. I think, I think college football coaches are just going to have to acclimate to a world where they have to go out and recruit 8 players every spring in a span of 2 weeks who are all going to be very, very prominent players for them by definition, because they're older guys. I think college basketball coaches, Matt Painter might have to do it kicking and screaming because it's not his thing, but I think he's going to be like every other coach in the country, where he's going to have to dabble in it starting this spring, provided Purdue loses some guys early to the NBA, things like that. I think that's probably the biggest story in all of college sports, let alone, the biggest stories at Purdue, that everything just kind of changed.
Yeah. In the craziest of years, I think that's an excellent point. Tom, you had your hand up. Did you have something you wanted to add before we bring this to a close?
Just remind me of that phrase, adapt or perish, I guess, right? Change or perish.
Change or die. Yep.
You go up again, just football wise, again, the new staff defensively too was big. I had my doubts and concerns, And boy, Jeff Braun looks like he really hit a home run with that defensive staff he put together coming into 2021. It was big too. So yeah, I think we got a lot of them hit there, fellas. You know, Brian, I had written down about the NIL stuff. So yeah, I think from a broader stroke standpoint, we also got Screw the Pooch and Malou in this.
I hope that's not offensive. I don't know what the origin.
It might be the dogs.
I hope I didn't.
I'm just kidding you.
I hope there aren't any dogs out there that took offense.
I don't know anymore. You never know what's going
to be. My phone's already blown up by dog owner.
Well, guys, I do wish you, the two of you, the merriest of Christmas with your families, and we'll look forward to. I know it'll be another busy week as Tom will be heading down to Nashville to start coverage, I believe, on the 27th. You're heading on the 26th. You'll have some Jeff Brom stuff. We'll obviously have a lot from that game on the 29th. Brian will have the Boilermakers take on not Nichols State. I don't know. Is it Nichols State?
Yeah, just Nichols now.
But they still, their website still says Nichols State. But and obviously some high school basketball as we get to end up this year. But it's going to be a relatively busy week in terms of holiday coverage. So we'll look forward to that. But I want to thank you all and wish all of you a Merry Christmas and Happy Holidays. Whatever you're celebrating, it's important that we look at you guys as part of our family. And we appreciate all of you taking the time to listen to us, especially on Christmas Eve or Christmas Day. And that means a lot to us as well. So we'll be back next week. I want to thank the Union Club Hotel, Boiler Up Bar, the 811 Restaurant. They've been great to us this year, as all our sponsors have. We're grateful for them. And we look forward to, we'll probably have a New Year's Eve show and try to figure out and post it maybe on New Year's Day. In between the college football playoff and all that's going to be going on next week. So have a great week, everyone, and Merry Christmas and happy holidays to all. We'll see you next week on our Saturday Simulcast.